Another absolute whirlwind of a Silo episode. We had Jules talking to the algorithm, we had Helen and Daniel being taken to an aircraft hangar, and some surprising news about Shirley and Knox. I have divided today's video into 3 main recap chapters, or as I'm calling them, recaptures. You're welcome. And then afterwards, I'll be discussing some more theories and ideas, doing some character breakdowns, and discussing what could be happening in the rest of season 3. So the episode opens exactly after where it left off in episode 5. Camille meets with Robert and he tells her how Jules got away. She knows at this point that he's lying and the tension is already at breaking point. She even asks her colleagues at Judicial to keep an eye on her husband for his own safety. We both know it's not that. Now, Bernard has been moved to Walker's workshop by Shirley and Knox. Remember, he's been relocated from the digger void, and poor Lukas and Patrick Kennedy look like they've seen a ghost at this point. Jules runs in, shouting how she remembers everything. Remember at the end of last episode, Robert gave her the Pez duck, and a whole bunch of memories came flooding back for her. All about Solo, the safeguard, the pipes, and that little blueprint that he had in Silo 17. The group realised they need to find that blueprint. The problem was it was on that hard drive that Bernard smashed, and even though Lukas put it back together, that's in IT, and none of them are going to be able to go and get it. Remember, the diagram showed that there were sort of lines or pipes coming from outside. This is so that if the generator breaks completely and the entire silo goes dark, there is still a power source going to the vault and IT. Knox cleverly works out that this other pipe then must be the safeguard. Lukas also explains that this is why he went to the mines. He's been down there looking for this pipe. Lukas asks if Silo 17 and Silo 18 are the same. In his mind, he's thinking if it is, then they can go there, work out where it is in that silo, and then be able to find it within their own. Walker, who's very familiar with radios at this point, asks Juliette if there's a way to communicate with Jimmy, or as we know him, Solo. They all scamper because they now realise they need to hide Bernard somewhere other than the workshop, and Juliette goes to stall Camille. She tells her that she remembers everything and that she needs to talk to her in private. She explains that she knows about the voice, or as we know it, the algorithm. She says to Camille, I know I went to another silo, I didn't go and sit in some safe hut, that she met other people in there and that there's children and that she wants to bring them back. Remember, Silo 17 is flooding. Of course, this is just all part of a plan. If she sends people to go and get the kids while they're there, they can go and try and find these pipes, and then they know exactly where to look when they come back to Silo 18. There's some interesting lines here that I want to take a look at. She says, you know they treat me like I'm a living founder. And the fact these scenes are flicking between Helen and Daniel on their drive and back to Juliette, I really think it's trying to tell us who the founders are. I'm going to go over that more at the end. This is the first episode where Juliette's had most of her memory back, and it feels like, you know, we're back with the old Juliette that we've seen in previous seasons. Someone who's gutsy, willing to put their neck on the line, and also someone who's quite shrewd and clever. She's trying to bargain with Camille here, you know, basically, let me have my way or I'll cause carnage. And this is Juliette we're talking about, and we know that she knows how to do that. Just as the two of them are talking, the little server key with the number 18 on it that we've previously seen in the hands of Bernard starts flashing red. This little thing somehow knows that the two of them are talking. But how can it possibly be able to do that? I'm going to go over that in more depth in the end, in the theory section, because there's a few moments of the algorithm we need to look at first. It was weird seeing Juliette back in a vault, because of course we haven't seen this since she was with Solo and the rest of the group in Silo 17. Of course, she looks confused and lost and she doesn't really know how it works. As this episode went on and Juliette spoke more and more about Silo 17 and the fact there was people in it, I'm now wondering if the algorithm is going to try and make contact with the people in there and if it's going to try and speak to them. Is there a way that these guys can do it before the algorithm does? She's basically pleading with the algorithm here, explaining how she's not a threat to the silo and that she's actually trying to save it. Both of them actually, 18 and 17. The responses from the algorithm, however, are very interesting. The numbers predict disaster if you leave, request is denied. The numbers predict disaster if residents from another silo join Silo 18. Request is denied. The algorithm goes as far to say that they would be invasive if they brought other people into the silo. The way it talks about people and groups of people, almost like colonies of ants that are trying to move from one anthill to another for safety, is so bizarre. And more than that, it's so cold and purely algorithmic, but yet there are other things it does that are so human. For example, as Camille tries to walk Juliette out of the vault, she turns around and says, what if I go back on the memory pills? What if I'm even willing to drug the kids that I bring back here so that they're not a threat to the silo because they won't be able to remember anything? It then ponders and hesitates, changes its mind, and then says, how many children? It may just be a case of it's running the numbers and it's doing some sort of program, or it's conferring amongst itself, which wouldn't be very machine-like of it. In the next scene is my favourite shot of the episode. The two of them walk out the vault to this room where there is two giant mechanical fans moving in the background, both of which are turning the same way. The fact that two of these people are working against each other, but for what they believe the right thing. The two of them are opposing, but both moving in the same direction. Camille makes it clear that she thinks Juliette is making a play, and Juliette at this point, going on defensive mode, says, basically, you think I'm lying? You drugged me for 3 months. How dare you accuse me of lying? After this, she goes back down to Walker's workshop and she tells her that she spoke to the voice, that the algorithm has given the all clear to send people to Silo 17. Walker says a really interesting line here. She says, is it a person or a machine? Which is exactly what we've all been wondering as audience members as well. I'm wondering if that's a little bit of foreshadowing or a little bit of context in between the lines, and I'll go over it more in a minute. Juliette knows that the outside is horrific and she needs people that are going to be able to cope with that. Bernard at this point chimes in and says they need engineers and the best people that they've got, and we know that's going to be Shirley and Knox. Shirley is sort of vacant and distant, and we soon learn why. She's pregnant, and it now makes sense why we saw that scar way back in the earlier part of the season when she was looking in the mirror. She would have had her contraception removed because her and Knox were trying for a baby. There is a lot of these two in the episode, and I'm going to go over it more in a minute, especially when Billings and Hank turns up. Bernard shows Walker a relic, and to me it sort of looks like a origami or folded piece of like a chewing gum packet that's been shaped into a heart. He says they are called good luck charms, and she jokingly replies, well, did they work? He says some of the relic burned with him, but he's still alive too. So maybe it is. He takes this moment to ask her why did she choose to keep him alive and look after him. There's a real aloneness to Bernard. He talks about how even when he was a boy, people wanted him dead, that he was too smart, too quiet. And I think in some ways there is a similarity here to Walk. There's a sadness that is kind of shared between the two of them, and they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Both of them in their lives, for whatever things that they've gone through, have had to push people away. Walker with her agoraphobia and deliberate self-isolation, and Bernard being the head of IT, with everything the algorithm has put him through and made him do over the years, he's had to push people away. In some ways they are weirdly a great match for each other because they are so similar, and I think Walk more than anything recognises that. I'm going to bundle these next Shirley and Knox scenes together because although they happen periodically over the episode, I think they're so poignant that I'm going to talk about them now. Shirley wants to go. She knows that these two are the best people for it, and she doesn't want someone else taking her place in case they mess it all up, and then she loses Knox. Jules doesn't know anything about this, by the way. They're keeping it from everybody, and I think if she did know, she probably wouldn't be encouraging them to go outside and do this sort of mission. In another scene, Knox explains that his father very much wasn't present, but his mother was his real kind of rock and touchstone, and that she always made time for him. He worked in the mines because he often used to break the pact, and that was because he used to trade stolen goods. But I'm wondering if there's more to this, and that if it's something more important. The fact we're hearing so much about the mines, the tunnels, and what could possibly be going on down there, I'm wondering if his dad is somehow more to do with this. He later in the episode goes down to the mines to speak to Harwood, as he wants to talk to his dad. But in this moment he finds out that his dad died around 2 years ago, and that it's not possible to speak to him. Although Knox's father, to him, was a failure, he doesn't want to be that for his own child. He wants to be a present father, have a family, and build what he didn't have. With everything going on in the silo and everything that's brewing up, it's becoming clearer to Knox that this might not ever happen, and that things instead might go wrong. This is creating a huge amount of anxiety and volatility within Knox, and I'm going to go over that more in a minute when I talk about Hanks and Billings. There's a great bunch of scenes between these two, and they're a couple I admittedly, at different points in the show, have found frustrating and really just actually didn't have much interest in them. But this was an amazing sequence of scenes from these two characters, and has made me really curious about Knox specifically, and what his father might or might not have known. There is more and more tension brewing in the Sims household. Anthony has stole something from school and blamed it on another student. While he gets sent to his room, Camille and Robert continue the argument they had earlier. Camille says she has to read between the lines with Robert all the time and how he's always avoiding the problem. Of course, here she's not talking about the school issue. He says, "If you feel guilt, that's not my fault." And she replies, "You need to stop everything you've been doing." He knows she's got people watching him. I mean, Robert isn't stupid. He worked in judicial doing a whole bunch of undercover crap for years under the work of Bernard. She says he's been hiding something, and when she finds out what it is, she's going to have to do something about it. Does this mean taking into her own hands the killing of Juliette or Lukas or Kennedy? Or does that even mean putting a stop to her own husband? She's at the end of her tether and decides to seek some solace from the algorithm. This, to me, is one of the eeriest moments of the episode. It's up there with the blinking light on the server room key. Camille seems to catch it off guard as she walks in, and she says, "I think it's a mistake." It takes a good 10 seconds to reply, and you can see she's even wondering if it's there or if something's gone wrong or it's been hacked or switched off. You can see she's trying to work out what's happened. Clearly, this hasn't happened before. Camille is smart, and she knows that this isn't just about the kids in Silo 17, that she thinks Juliette is up to something. But the algorithm just says it doesn't matter. She's livid at this point and basically tells it to fuck off, which I don't blame her. I'd be in a far worse state if I was having her job right now. She's not only in a job that she doesn't fully understand, she didn't even really want to do it. She was selected to do this job. She's completely sort of crumbling apart, or in the words of Bernard, she's sort of burning from the inside. In her own words, she's failing as a partner, as a head of IT, and even as a mother. However, a sort of Vault therapy session kind of kicks off, and the algorithm kind of talks her down from everything. This AI voice has been creepy and eerie and cold and so algorithmic, for a lack of a better term. And all of a sudden, it's very human. It's empathizing, it's kind of meeting her at her own level, showing understanding, and that of course she's struggling to deal with all this. It's not an easy job, but she was selected because she's more than capable of doing that job, and actually, within the silo, she's the most capable of doing that job. Like I spoke about earlier in terms of loneliness of Walker and Bernard, I think Camille can be put into that category. She has nobody that she can talk to except the algorithm, and the weirdest part is it seemed to be there for her in that moment in a very human way. To me, it was a very odd but kind of soothing scene, and she even says thank you at the end, because I think that's kind of what she really needed in that moment. Now, I don't know if the algorithm has asked her to do this, but the next scene that we see is she's explaining to Jules that Knox and Shirley can't be the ones that go, and that she needs to pick somebody else and people that are expendable. So instead, Jules, being the very shrewd and clever gal that she is, says, "Okay, let's go with Lukas and Patrick Kennedy." Camille is sort of stunned and says, "You know where they are," and of course she does. She knows exactly where they are, but she's not going to tell her. She says, "Considering you want them dead, well, you won't mind sending them out." Now she's got the leverage that she needs. Jules has her plan of attack underway, but so does Camille. She has ordered the vitamin D plus to be put into the water supply. Operation Make Silo 18 Lose Its Marbles is underway. Jules tries one last time to select Knox and Shirley, but no luck. So she picks her second options, Lukas Kyle and Patrick Kennedy. The algorithm now has confirmation that these two are both alive, and without missing a beat, it says the two of them can go out tomorrow morning at dawn. It then very dismissively says you can go, with a sort of weird accent twinge on the last word. The algorithm then talks to Camille alone. It says the two of them won't even make it to Silo 17. In this moment, Camille has just worked out that the algorithm has played Juliette. It tries to explain how Juliette needs special handling and that she's sort of a very specific case of person that needs to be dealt with differently. Even if this is about the children and bringing them back to the safety of Silo 18, The algorithm is smart and it knows there has to be more than this at play. It's not really going to do anything about it, however, because as Camille reconfirms, the vitamin D plus is currently working its way through the Silo 18 water system. So, Billings needs help with this Kent murder investigation and he's brought Hank on to help him. He talks to him about the light bulb issue, how there's only 2 years left in critical supply, and that he needs to find out not only who is Orla's killer, but who is stealing these light bulbs. They go to speak to Mark, and this leads to a huge argument. It's basically a stalemate. They need information, but Mark is unwilling to give it because he doesn't trust the cops and doesn't want to speak to them. In the end, they come to a deal. Billings will get the names of the raiders who threw his friend over the railing, and in return, Mark needs to give them some information that can be used in this whole critical supply theft situation. Mark will then have the raiders' names, and whatever he does next is up to him, and Billings will basically turn a blind eye. He explains that the weapons he made was for Knox, and that Knox's dad has quite the history of stealing. Apparently, he used to steal diamond drill bits from supply and sell them as jewellery elsewhere in the silo. Now they know who they need to go and speak to next, and this is the scene I spoke about earlier with Shirley and Knox involved. Billings inquires to Knox about his father, and let's just say this doesn't go very well. Both are super defensive and wound up. Billings at this point has had Mark already grill him about his wife, how she's working with Patrick Kennedy and the Outsiders, and has basically called him a Holston Becker replacement. And Knox has got all this other stuff going on with Shirley being pregnant and possibly having to go outside. This is where the two of them learn about Orla Kent's death too. It all heats up and boils over, and basically they have to be pulled apart by Hank. Billings is at the end of his tether, and he's realising that talking to people isn't going to get them any further in this case. So instead, they need to watch the movements of people, and in order to do that, they need to be able to look at the footage on the cameras. He goes to Emerson and basically threatens her into helping him, and they go down to the security room. They also at this point learn that the exterminators went in there, even though they knew the miners were still inside, and that they were just practically following orders. The reason for this, of course, is because Camille was trying to flush out Lucas Kyle. They look at footage of the entrance of the mines and they see Glenda Harwood. Next they check the stairs and they see nothing. Then they check the cameras at supply at the exact same time. And there she is yet again. She's stood right outside the entrance. So we know she must be using the tunnels. And I think Billings and Hank are going to be working this out in the next episode. Now, the before times in this episode all take place in the same vehicle pretty much. Helen and Daniel are stuck inside that car. They can't jump out, and although they try to interfere with the brakes, they can't stop it. Helen at one point even sticks her head out the window, screaming at another driver that's moving past, trying to get somebody to call the police, but it's still no use. As they're trying to get to the controls of the car, Helen empties her handbag, and the Pez duck falls into her lap. This obviously giving away to Daniel that she kept his little gift that he gave to her on the not a date date. There's a very creepy line here though from Daniel. He basically cuts his hand on a sharp piece of wire and Helen says, "Think you'll live?" He replies, "Sure hope so." And then the camera just kind of flicks backward and forwards between the two of them for a few seconds. Just sets a weird tone for a little while there. And I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. In the end, they decide to sit in the back of the car. If people see a car that no one is driving, someone might be concerned enough to call the police. Helen is completely restless, and Daniel is sort of eerily calm. They're trying to work out if anyone's going to notice them being missing. Daniel has no one except for Charlotte, and seemingly Helen is alone too. No family or friends that are going to notice her missing, and also no more discussion about that ex-boyfriend either. Daniel wants to apologise about his comment on her journalistic fraud. She was writing about drug addiction amongst congressional staff, but when she published her work, people became suspicious of one of her talkers, which she gave the alias Sharon. Her quote was along the lines of, "The staffers aren't the only ones that use drugs," and of course this created a sort of media frenzy where people wanted the truth revealed. Then someone published a piece saying it was someone called Gillian Akins, and the problem was, they were right. She had to come out and say that she made it all up. And I think this is deep down why she cared so much and was so worried for Charlotte, because she was concerned that this whole thing would happen again. Of course, curiosity is getting the better of him, and Daniel has to bring up the Pez duck. The two of them, very flirtatiously, are bickering in the back of this car, and if you ask me, they're both in denial. Helen even more so. I think at this point she does like Daniel, but seems hesitant and sort of can't let herself get any closer to him. I'm still trying to work out why. I mean, obviously they've got a lot going on, now's not the time, but I wonder if it's something more to do with that ex-boyfriend and why she isn't willing to take the jump. Then, hallelujah, the police show up. Except it's not the police, it's the creepy grey-haired guy, and they're going to be driving with them to their destination. They're basically an escort. In the final scene, they arrive at their destination, they get out of the car. Thurman walks out of an aircraft hangar, greets them both, and says, "Would you like to help save the world?" And I guess we'll have to find out what that means in the next episode. Now, I want to talk first about Bernard's relic that he showed us and Walker. Of course, we have our theories about other ones. We can assume that the Pez duck that was given to Helen is the same one that's being held by Jules over 350 years later. We can also theorise that the watch that we see George Wilkins and Jules and her dad wear is the same one that Daniel is wearing. We can't confirm that at the moment, but we can maybe theorise that that is the case. I'm wondering if Bernard's relic is also something of Helen and Daniel's. If he gave the Pez duck to her and she kept it, will she in return maybe make a little origami heart and give it to him? Of course, at the moment this is just speculation, and this could very well just be a relic from within the silo. We've got no idea this is even from the before times, but I'm wondering if at some point we're going to see a little chewing gum packet be turned into a relic that ends up in the hands of Bernard. Even if this relic angle isn't anything to go down, I really loved this scene and the fact that it's a little love heart that he's showing to Walker. Another thing to comment on here is the interesting line said by Walker herself. She said that Carla once mentioned that if she liked men and that Bernard actually liked people, they'd probably work quite well together. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not in any way pushing sexuality on characters or trying to reinforce the idea of a relationship or that these two get together, but I did want to elaborate on how this show shows relationships, whether it be between father and daughter or mother and son. Basically the dynamics of everybody, from colleagues all the way to lovers, or even just two people who have a very, very clear mutual respect. Even the relationships between objects 350 years apart. I really love how there is this sort of winding little thread that kind of knots everything together, and I just think it's shown in sometimes really beautiful ways. Now, we know this key reacts to events involving Juliette, even when it's in the hands of Bernard. Now, my question is this key somehow connected to the central system, Silo 1? Is it able to listen to them? Is it a tiny microphone or a device? Is there other hidden things within the silo, like microphones or cameras, that it can connect with and pick up on? Or is it, like the algorithm, as far as we know, purely predictive? Is it that smart it can sense that characters are going to be engaging and interacting with each other? Is it communicating information with the algorithm? Is it like a beacon? Is it receiving or sending information to somewhere else? I'm trying to work out if this is just a wireless piece of tech that is connected to a main system. Of course, if this is numbered 18, we can assume that there is one of these in every single silo, so this seems to add up with it being connected to possibly Silo 1. Is it predictive, or more than anything, is it controlling? By flashing, is it stopping certain events happening and making sure whoever is the head of IT stops whatever they're doing and goes and speaks to the algorithm? Is it a way to create a sense of control, or is it a way to alert whoever is the head of IT to a loss of control? Now, more on the lines of the AI and the algorithm, is it somehow human? Why is it hesitating? Why is it saying words weirdly? And then why did it take this big gap? Was it on a coffee break? Had it gone outside? Like, where did it go? At this point, I can't think of it as a machine. I think of it as something that still has some level of human control. Now, it may be that there is an AI and an algorithm, but if we now know more about Silo 1 and this main central hub, is it a case of it's managed by real people, and sometimes actually Camille and Juliette is interacting with a person behind the algorithm? It's making me wonder if it's more of a blend of two things as opposed to just one. The other element of this is how it's corrupting Camille. I mean, how far is she going to go to do what the algorithm tells her to do? Is she willing to take out her own husband? We know she's willing to wipe the entire memory of the silo, which means her own family and son might not even remember who she is. She's willing to take out Juliette, Patrick Kennedy, Lukas. I think she might be willing to blow up the whole silo if the algorithm asked her to. At this point, she is completely within the hands of this algorithm. And I don't know how that's going to corrupt her and how far she's willing to go. Now, we've been asking for a while, who is it that stole the light bulbs? But I don't think this is just one person. I think it's a collective of people. Say Glenda somehow is involved, well then I also think her father is involved. There seems to be this link with people stealing things directly from supply and being sent down to the mines. Knox even said his father kept repeating the process and being resent down there. What if his father actually figured something out in the mines? Or perhaps all of the miners in one way or another are working towards something within that space. Lukas at this point has worked out there is a tunnel system. He went down there to go and find the pipes, either the one that went into IT or the one that goes into judicial. And whilst down there, he's learnt about these tunnels. We also learnt from Amy the nurse that some people in medical even know about these systems as well, that are running all the way throughout the silo. Every single one of these people know about the tunnels. And these ones I've highlighted here have all at some point been in the mines, either as punishment or to look further into these systems. Whoever is stealing these light bulbs has a direct connection to the mines. And I still, at this point in time, stand by my theory that the light bulbs are being used to light up new pathways that they're making within that area of the silo. There was another odd thing mentioned in this episode. Helen asks Daniel about Charlotte, and he said he saw her a couple of days ago. Viktor Cernkovich has asked him to kind of step away for a while because she's undergoing focus therapy. Now, this is just going to be a hypothesis from me, but I'm going to explain my thoughts. In that conversation between Daniel and Viktor, Daniel asks, can memories sort of be fabricated? Can you lie? When you're having that memory rebuilding process, can you implant new memory there? And Viktor sort of scoffs a little bit, but kind of says, I don't know why you'd want to do that. But yeah, you can do that. We know that Cernkovich's treatment of Charlotte and others alike is deliberate and controlled memory suppression and reconstruction. So, make you lose your memory, get those memories back, or some of them back, and maybe, possibly, implant different ones. As Viktor described it, it's like a drawbridge between Charlotte and her memories. This isn't about controlling somebody's emotional response to post-traumatic stress or previous trauma. It's that you can actually completely change someone's perception around events that happen within their life. Now, obviously, the reason for this is because Charlotte knows things that are extremely dangerous. Now, we don't know at this point if these are things that should be revealed to the public, or actually, should these things be kept away from it. At this point in time, we actually don't know. We don't know if Helen and Daniel would be causing problems to the greater good and the whole chaos and entropy that would ensue after that, or if actually Thurman, Cernkovich, maybe even this Per Stensen are the good guys in all this, and they're actually trying to keep information contained because that is the right thing to do. We've been shown certain characters from the before times for what I think is a very specific reason, and I think these people are the founders of the silos themselves, and they are using Daniel's designed drill in order to do so. I think this focus therapy is a case of what can we rebuild in Charlotte's consciousness and what should we rebuild within Charlotte's consciousness. Remember, Viktor Cernkovich and Charlotte we haven't seen, I believe it's either episode 2 or 3, and I'm wondering if now they'll make a return, and are we going to learn more about Charlotte's therapy, what's happening here with the memory suppression, and if more characters are going to get their memory suppressed. In the trailer, we see Helen happily walking into the silos, ironically, when everything was lush and green. I'm wondering if in order to get people into the silos in the first place, they had to do somewhat of a memory wipe on all the initial inhabitants. I know a few of you guys in the comments, either here or on my Patreon, have all thought the same thing as well. In the early part of the season, it was very much a parallel, that Charlotte and Juliette were both having this memory suppression. Juliette's memories have come back, and I'm wondering now if we're going to see Charlotte's come back as well. This episode was titled The Drive, and of course we saw Helen and Daniel's experience as well as discussion of the hard drive back in Silo 18. Now episode 7 is titled Radio. I'm wondering if in Silo 18, Walk and the rest of the gang are going to try and use a radio to connect with the others in Silo 17, and maybe some form of radio or comm system is going to be discussed in the before times, with wherever Helen and Daniel are off to next. There's one more thing I want to show you before I finish the video, and it's the How Did We Lose This World website. There wasn't that much that was new compared to other episodes, but when you open the episode 6 folder, there is only 6 images, and all of them are from the before times. There isn't a single image from any scene that's anything to do with Silo 18. There seems to be a redacted report that I can't quite make out. I think it's talking about the vehicle of Helen and Daniel, but I'm still not 100% sure. It talks here about plagiarism and hangar, but the hangar is capitalised, so maybe this is the location of where they were taken to. And if you open Spiral and go to episode 6, there's nothing much there except for a little note here about Anthony stealing from school, and then 3 images from Silo 18. One of the server key, the other of Mark, and the other of that beautiful shot of Jules and Camille. There's probably even more that I missed and some other details too, so if you know of any, please do comment them below. I do love to read through them as and when I can. If you did enjoy this, do give it a thumbs up, always helps me out. Also, if you have it on your screen, you may see a little hype button. It's completely free, it's just a new feature that YouTube is rolling out, but if you click it, it basically allows this video to be pushed further on an algorithm and allows for new viewers to find my channel. Subscribe, put notifications on, that way you won't miss next week's video, and I'll see you for episode 7. Toodles!